Welcome to the final day of the Prelude and VTF Continuous Security Testing Bootcamp. I hope that you've learned a lot about security, Prelude, and how you can use Detect and other security mechanisms to verify your security posture individually or within an organization setting. Today, we will give you some final information about Prelude and our mission and the overall topic of continuous security testing. We have a shorter than normal keynote today, with most of the time dedicated to the day's challenge. Today's demo and exercise will involve conducting a full mini purple team exercise. During this exercise, we will combine everything we've done so far, as well as show you how to use more features of Detect. We will deploy probes, schedule verified security tests using the probes, and analyze the results of the tests. We will identify what remediation steps need to be taken and write a report summarizing that. At the end of the day, you will have run a purple team assessment and understand how each piece fits together. Purple teaming is evolving in today's world. It started off as that communication barrier between red teams and blue teams and figuring out how to get people to talk together. It's starting to really evolve now. I started seeing this in 2022. It's really starting to accelerate in 2023. Which is purple teaming is now switching gears into a entity of its own. It's all about developing tools and techniques to conduct continuous security testing. Now, the idea of a purple team assessment is therefore shifting along with the definition. Purple team assessments used to be heavily manual. Every quarter, you would run a single security test, or TTP. You would evaluate a whole environment based on one test. Now, today, purple teaming is shifting into multiple tests happening all at the same time every day across an entire infrastructure. And that process requires a whole different mindset and capabilities and tools. Now, I'm hoping the exercises or the tools and processes we're learning in this workshop and this bootcamp are going to help prepare you for this kind of new era of purple team exercises. Faster paced, more robust, more things happening, but also a result of more secure systems. Let's start with some final information about Prelude. Yesterday, we talked a little about who we are, who we're looking for, and how we all work together across multiple countries and time zones. Today, I want to talk about what you can expect to see from Prelude moving forward, and why should you care? Prelude is a technology company that helps organizations proactively ask questions of their security systems to advance their defenses. Built around the notion of visibility, our products, again, largely open source, conduct continuous probing that elicits answers to questions that range from basic health checks to vulnerability to latest threats across all environments. By translating obscure definitions of security, what's red teaming, what's simulation, what's adversary emulation, into concrete questions, Prelude provides holistic internal intelligence with which customers can identify, prioritize, and take action seamlessly without any of the unknowns. The offensive security space is evolving. It's changing. We talked about the impact on purple teams. This is really spreading at this point beyond purple teams. Blue teaming is starting to get more robust in automation. Expectations are going into the continuous validation. Red teaming is being forced from the manual hands-on keyboard of every command being typed in into using tools that are tied to AI systems, that are tied to ML, that are tied to running things asynchronously or concurrently. Things are happening faster. And all of this is kind of leading us down to this pipeline of how can we do things in a 24/7 continuous nature that both seals up our defenses and provides tools to our offensive operators that allow them to move quicker? We have big plans at Prelude. We're going to write more VSTs. We're going to do more training sessions just like this. We're going to add more integrations with EDRs and SIMs and other security tools to make continuous security testing even easier. Think daily tests running relevant and safe attacks against all your production endpoints, any failures being automatically flagged, sent to the EDR for logging and remediation. We have this set up for a few EDRs. CrowdStrike is one of our premier integration points. We're going to be expanding this into other places as well. One of the big problems in the blue team, the defensive side of cybersecurity today, is the volume of data that's having to be kind of waded through. So we talked yesterday a little about SIMs and SOARs and these kind of data lakes of all the data coming from all these endpoints being shipped over to a SIM, and blue teams having to write detection rules and analyze these large sums of data. Now that means more people are needed and more processes are needed to set up and to analyze the data. Now, that problem gets even bigger the bigger data gets. The more data you have, the more people you need, the more time it takes. Now, what we're trying to do in a lot of ways with the concept of a verified security test is, can we solve the problem on the endpoint so less data has to go to a SIM? What I would call a flood of data that's going to the SIM today should convert and turn into a trickle of data that is only the high value, high signal data is needed to be analyzed by blue teams and defenders. And that requires security testing to work hand in hand with EDRs and AVs and other defensive controls on each endpoint. So as soon as a security test finds a vulnerability or an unprotected system, it can pass that information to the EDR on the same computer, which can resolve the issue on the fly instead of having to require a person to dial in and resolve the issue. That, I think, is the future of continuous security testing. There's a long ways to get between here and there, setup and integration points and so forth. But I think the skills we're learning in this bootcamp to write security tests, to schedule security tests, to understand the ecosystem of continuous testing is going to be the building blocks we need to make that future happen. Security testing has long been reserved for low-scale development environments. Typically, security teams operate on 5, 10, maybe 20 different types of computers that are supposed to mirror the entire infrastructure. That only allows you to test low volume. The results then get extrapolated to the infrastructure as a whole, which means if I see a problem on a Windows computer in my development environment, that means I have the same problem on 15,000 computers that have the same image of Windows. That doesn't work that way in the real world. The problem is every computer is different because every configuration is different. Every user is different. They have different setups and files and configurations and registry keys, and all of those differences and usage patterns make for a different security posture and attack surface. The decisions that are made from security testing, from the results in today's world, are made with partial information. If you can only test on 5 or 10 or 20 machines, but your organization has 100,000 computers and endpoints, you can only make decisions that are partial. Year over year, as security incidents climb in both number and in impact, it has become evident that this path is not making the world a safer place. Detect exists to provide clarity about infrastructure, your infrastructure. Are your devices secure or are they insecure? So let's do a full cycle using Detect. We will deploy probes. We will schedule verified security tests using the probes. We will analyze the results of the verified security tests. We will identify what remediation steps are needed to be taken. We will remediate the issues. We will then rerun the VSTs to ensure the remediation was successful. And finally, we will write a report that summarizes all of the steps. This report would be the thing we pass off to our managers, our security teams, our executives, so they can understand the impact of what we're doing and how we are working expediently and continuously to improve the security of our organization. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, Brian here. Welcome to the day one product demo. We are going to start by going over the main platform page from top to bottom. Much of this is actually brand new. You're some of the first to be using these new features. If your platform page doesn't match this demo right now, don't worry. This update is rolling out sometime very soon. Much of the platform remains pretty similar before it goes out. Alright, let's dig in. So across the top of the screen, you can see a variety of CVEs, CISA alerts, and other emerging threats. Alerts from trusted entities like CISA and MITRE are converted into verified security tests that you can run from here. In the boxes, you can see how the threat is classified, the related identifiers like CVE or alert number, and how many tests we have available. There are many reasons why we would have multiple tests for the same threat, and most can be traced back to the infiniteness of TTP procedures. You can filter your test results by clicking on the checkbox in the top left or on the alert itself. If a test hasn't been scheduled to run, it won't show up on this bar graph. By clicking the Read More button on the threat, you can see more details about it and the tests that are available. On the right side of the screen, you can see more information. It provides you with the ability to schedule the test or download the source code. Below that is a brief summary of what the VST is actually going to test. It includes the steps the VST will take and provides example output. And it wraps up with recommendations for remediation if your endpoint fails the test. Now, there are two main types of tests. Health tests monitor various configurations and settings on an endpoint to ensure they are in good standing. Response tests evoke feedback from each one of your endpoints, finding out is it protected or unprotected from a known threat. Each test runs a series of behaviors associated to a real-world threat and records whether the endpoint prevented it or not. When a threat becomes high impact enough to show up on a government advisory, like this one here, the corresponding tests are promoted inside Detect. Response tests exit with a granular code describing what happened during execution. This code determines at which point the test was stopped by a defensive control or configuration. And there are three primary control types that might block a test. The first of these three is antivirus protection, which is a static analysis that identifies the test as malicious before execution. Now, software, when categorized as malicious, is defined by a set of static signatures that allow antivirus defenses to identify and remove it immediately. Next-generation antivirus protection stops the test during execution because of the behaviors it displays. And finally, network protection. For example, an attempted download from a test is stopped by a firewall or an intrusion detection system. Like I said before, it is possible to have multiple tests for the same group of CVEs that covers antivirus and next-gen antivirus. For instance, we currently have two tests for Lockbit 3.0. One tests antivirus and includes a signatured malware that should be flagged. The other test tests next-gen antivirus and mimics the behavior that should be detected. The difference between antivirus tests and next-gen antivirus tests is that the antivirus tests are focused on signatures and hashes, while the next-gen antivirus is focused on user behavior. Alright, moving back over to this, if you look over here on the left-hand side, you can see that we currently support Linux, Macs, and Windows. But with their small size, probes can be run on almost any type of device. You can create tags to group these different types of devices. Potential tags include workstations, servers, containers, and more. You can also filter your results by tag. And this leads us to the most eye-catching piece of the Detect UI, the main bar graph. This graph gives you an overview over time for how well defended your endpoints are versus the tests you run against them. It's pretty standard, where green means pass and red means fail. You can filter this graph using the checkboxes on the left and above, as we've shown. Now, clicking into this, we can see that there was an error here. Since it's yellow, yellow means error. Clicking the endpoint that experienced an error, we can see that it failed a health check. More interestingly from this view, however, is we can see a large percentage of the servers were previously vulnerable on May 7th, May 8th, and May 9th. Let's see what all of this red is about. Clicking in, we can get a second view that shows us that, yes, most of the servers we had here were vulnerable for a few days. And we can click into one of these to see what happened. We can scroll through the test results and see that this endpoint was vulnerable to the colorblind Trojan. It reported its vulnerable status to CrowdStrike, and the problem was remediated, and it started passing the test shortly after. We have similar integrations with Splunk and others, with more on the way. If you completed the last VTF bootcamp with Splunk, Detect is a tool you can use to refine your Splunk abilities. So, how can you do all of this on your own? Well, I've got good news, and that is that Prelude Detect is free up to 100 tests per day. This can be 10 tests on 10 endpoints, or 1 test on 100 endpoints, or however you want to divide it up. You can create a free account by clicking the button in the top right. Fill out your information, including a valid email address. Please use the same email address that you registered for this bootcamp with. After doing that and clicking sign up, go to your email and click the verification link. This will return you to the platform page logged in and ready to install a probe in the low probe experience. Tomorrow, we will talk more about the low probe experience. The final step for today is installing a probe and scheduling the demo tests to run. I'm going to jump over to my signed in account so I can show this part off. So, to add a probe, we're going to click the Add a Probe button up here. If you're on the low probe experience, there may also be another button closer to the middle. But we're going to click Add a Probe. We are going to generate our registration string. It will create this. We are going to copy the registration string to our clipboard. From there, we're going to select the operating system that you want to download it to, whether it's Windows, Linux, or Mac. Go through the installation process, and when prompted, just paste in that registration string, and you'll be set up and good to go. Hey, welcome back to the Day 2 Prelude Detect demo. Here we are in what we call the low probe view, an optional but highly encouraged stage of our new user setup. It is a launch pad for getting started with tests and probes so users can get a sense of the defensive posture on their local machine and then scale. This view is optimized for a small number of endpoints, under 5. Once you hit 5 endpoints, it moves you to the experience that matches the first demo. In this view, you can see individual probe status without needing to click anything. It shows you which of your current endpoints are completely protected from tests and which aren't. And you can get to individual probe history in a single click. You should remember this view from yesterday's demo. This lists the probe's test history, letting you know what tests it passed and what it failed. There's no way to filter in this low probe view, but it is good if you only have a small number of probes you check in on. You should have added a probe yesterday, but in case you didn't, you can click Add a probe up here in the top corner, right here, or here in the left. No matter which one you click, it will take you to generate a registration string, which you can then copy and paste and add it when prompted to the installer that is right for your endpoint. If you have any issues with this, search through the VTF Slack chat for solutions, as a few people already have had issues posted about it and we found solutions for them. By clicking skip this step, you can get to the view that matches the demo we saw earlier. Some of you may have already done this after yesterday's demo. Now, you should be in the main platform page. We're going to start by showing you how to add a user to your account. Click your handle in the top right corner, followed by Manage Users. You can see here your current account members, plus registrars that are used to register endpoints. If you have anyone you want to add to your Detect account, this is the place. You'll need to add a permission level and an email address for the user. You can also add a name and an expiration for their permissions if you'd like. There are 4 main permission levels. Admin permissions are what your account will have and has full access to all capabilities. Service permissions are the default and the most limited. Only registration of new endpoints is allowed. Build permissions give read access to the executive dashboard and read-write access to all build actions on the CLI. We will talk more about build actions in the demo tomorrow. Finally, executive permissions allow read access to the executive dashboard. Filling out this information and clicking Invite will send them an email they can use to register their account. To remove a user, simply click the 3 dots icon in the right, followed by Remove User. Now that you can manage the users on your account, let's get into managing test results. This can be done on either the CLI or the UI. While you are on the CLI, you can run Prelude Detect activity to get a list of all the tests that ran. However, this isn't ideal, especially as the number of tests ramps up, and the UI is much easier to use for this purpose. The tests were enabled yesterday and should have run by now, which will give you some initial activity to look to. Now, we're going to go back over some of what we did yesterday, but focused on your account and not the demo. Across the top of the screen, you can still see a variety of CVEs, CIS alerts, and other emerging threats that you can run against your newly installed probe. These alerts are converted into verified security tests that you can run using Detect. By clicking the About This Test button on the threat, you can see more details about it. It provides you with the ability to download the source code, and below that is a brief summary of what the VST is actually going to test. It includes the steps the VST will take and provides example output. It wraps up with recommendations for remediation if your endpoint fails the test. There are 2 main types of these tests that you can run against your endpoint. Health tests monitor various configurations and settings on an endpoint to ensure they are in good standing. Response tests evoke feedback from each one of your endpoints, finding out is it protected or unprotected from a known threat. Remember, probes can be run on almost any type of device. To schedule more tests or remove tests from the queue, we can click the Scheduling tab on the left. From here, you can see all the tests that you have scheduled. You can see if they are health or response tests, and you can see the frequency of the test. You can change the frequency by hovering over it and clicking Edit. This allows you to easily select how often the test is run. You can also see the target of the test. You can edit the target in the same way by clicking it and only setting it to certain tags if you'd like. To remove a test from the schedule, simply click the icon on the right and then Remove from Schedule. To add new tests to the queue, click Schedule a Test in the top right. This allows you to select the test, the frequency, and the target sorted by tag. Then, you just have to click Schedule, and they will be added to the queue. You can then see it along with the rest of your tests. Utilizing these test results in a SIM or EDR is a great next step. Right now, attaching to Splunk or CrowdStrike is simple due to the integrations. We have more integrations like these coming, so stay tuned. Just click your profile, and then Integrations. For Splunk, your test results will filter into your log so you can understand where the tests were stopped. For CrowdStrike, your endpoints will report all failed test results directly to CrowdStrike for remediation. Select one, and then enter the corresponding information, and you're all set. That wraps up the demo for today. Check out the activity to next, and I will see you tomorrow. Hey everyone, welcome back for the Day 3 product demo. Before we jump into the main part of today's demo, I want to point out the build commands within Prelude Detect. The build commands are designed to allow custom VSTs to be written and added. The docs outline how you can use the build commands, as well as integrate them with Visual Studio. By running the command prelude build within the CLI, you can see the provided options. Create test creates or updates a security test. This can be a completely new test or a variation of one that Prelude created. Delete test deletes a test from your test list. The download command downloads a test to your local environment so that you can edit it there. The map command maps an identifier to a test, and conversely, the unmap command unmaps an identifier from a test. The test command lists properties for a test. Finally, upload uploads a test attachment from the disk. Writing and editing verified security tests is a bit beyond this bootcamp, but you can feel free to try these build commands if you like. We'll have future training content available for writing and editing VSTs. For now, check out our blog for more information. If you're interested in using the build commands, the CLI likely isn't the best place to do so. For a short period of time, actually, Prelude Build was a standalone product, but we found it best when integrated with Visual Studio. Instructions for how you can connect Prelude to Visual Studio are available in the docs here. Now, we're going to start scaling our detect coverage. We're going to do that by creating virtual machines to deploy probes to. Understanding what a virtual machine is and how to create one will help your entry into cybersecurity. There are many options for creating a virtual machine. Microsoft Azure, Amazon AWS, and Google GCP offer similar functionality and free trial options. Feel free to check out the documentation for each and figure out which one seems the best fit for you. You could also use a smaller cloud provider. It just may not have the free trial or ease of use. While we could teach you in much more detail how to set up a virtual machine, the platforms themselves already have a ton of content. See the exercise details to find guides for getting VMs set up on Azure, AWS, and GCP. For this demo, I'm going to use Microsoft Azure to create a Windows 10 desktop virtual machine, though the process for creating Windows Server virtual machines and Linux virtual machines is very similar. Full disclosure, we use AWS at Prelude along with many Google products, so I'm using Azure here to diversify and avoid endorsing any one company. We start here, inside the Azure portal homepage. The Quick Start Center can be used to learn how to provision and manage virtual machines using Azure. If this is your first time setting up a virtual machine, I would highly recommend working through each step here. For this demo, we're going to jump straight to deploy Azure virtual machine. You can watch this instructional video if you like, but again, for the demo, we're going to jump straight to deploy a virtual machine in the Azure Quick Start Center. This will pull up the option to create either a Windows or Linux virtual machine. If you select the wrong one for any reason, don't worry, you can change it later. We are going to start by provisioning a Windows 10 virtual machine that has Windows Defender on it. To do so, we are going to click Create on the Create a Windows Virtual Machine tab. Here are the basic settings for the virtual machine. The resource group should autofill after you add a name. Name your virtual machine something to help you identify it is related to this bootcamp. You can see I named mine VTF Bootcamp Win 10 Pro. This allows me to know what was provisioned and why it was provisioned just by the name. You can change the region if you like, though US East is the region I would like to deploy to, so I'm going to leave it as is. We don't require any redundancy here, as nothing critical will be stored on this virtual machine. The image is the real meat of the virtual machine. This is where you can select between different endpoints to virtualize. For this demo, I'm going to select Windows 10 Pro. The smallest size will suffice for our needs here. We don't need a whole lot to run a probe. The expected cost also falls well under the current free credits I was given, even if I run it for multiple months. Next, I will add a username and password. Don't forget these, as you'll need them to connect to the virtual machine. I'm not going to change the inbound port. Again, we don't need to worry too much about security on these test machines. The last step is checking that I have a valid Windows license. Next, we will skip to disks. I'm going to start by downgrading the disk from Premium SSD to Standard SSD, as we really don't need the Premium option here. I would avoid downgrading to HDD, as it's much slower. Next, we will check out the Networking tab. I'm not going to make any changes here, but here you can see how to edit or connect to your virtual machine. Since we're going to be running probes and verified security tests against this virtual machine, it makes sense to have Microsoft Defender enabled. It's also included in my current free plan. The last item we're going to view is monitoring. We're also going to leave these settings alone. For our purposes, we don't need to make any changes. We also aren't going to worry about any advanced settings or adding tags, but you're free to learn more about both of those on your own. The final step before creating our virtual machine is to review the settings. Scrolling through, we can see all of the settings that we just set up. All in one place. After we confirm our settings, all that's left to do is click Create. Deployment can take a couple minutes, and you can see the resources as they pop up. Once the virtual machine is deployed, you will see the option to connect to it. Now you can see the deployment is complete, so I'm going to go to the resource. After going to the resource, all I have to do to connect to the virtual machine is click Connect. There, it will give me an RDP file that I can download. After downloading this file, all you have to do is open it up. It will then prompt you to enter the username and password that you set in the earlier steps. Once you do that, you're good to go, and you should be connected right into your virtual machine. After creating your virtual machine, it will be time to deploy probes on them. We're going to start out on our host machine. We need to get the registration string that we will use for our probe. To do that, we'll click Add a Probe, and then we will generate the registration string and copy it to our clipboard. Anytime you generate a registration string, the previous registration strings become invalid. If you're getting a .NET Runtime 403 error, it is likely an issue with the registration string. With the registration string copied, we're now ready to go back into our virtual machine. We are now inside the virtual machine. To deploy a probe, open up Microsoft Edge or another web browser. We're going to go to docs.preludesecurity.com. From here, we'll click into Prelude Detect, and we're looking for security probes. Next, we'll look for the installed security probes and scroll down until we get to Windows. Right here, you can see the link to get the Windows installer, so we are going to download the Windows installer. We are going to open the file and go through the probe setup wizard. As you can remember, we already copied our registration string from our main platform, so I'm just going to paste that in and complete the installation. As you can see, the probe has been successfully installed. All I need to do now is go back to my main Detect platform page, and I'll be able to see this new probe. It's time to start a full purple team loop, from an executive asking a question of their security team to the report that they get back. We're going to assume that these virtual machines that we just set up represent a sample of endpoints within an organization that we are in charge of security for. Our board of directors just saw a news report and asked if we were protected from royal ransomware. Before Detect, we wouldn't have been able to answer them with any certainty. We could say something like, our EDR should protect us, but we wouldn't really know if our EDR would protect us. We start this process by pulling up the list of available tests on the CLI or UI. We're going to use the UI for this demo. We will need to schedule a new test in order to answer this security question. Browsing through the tests, we can see one that is related to the question we were just asked. We will schedule this test to run daily. The test won't take 24 hours to run either. It should run within the hour. By running the test daily, we will avoid the many issues that come with delays between tests and know if our protected status changes. This is the core of continuous security testing. Running tests often and being able to provide more certainty around security for organizations of all sizes. That wraps up today's demo. Check out the exercise to build off this and complete the purple team loop.